I was sitting at my desk on the morning of my 27th birthday, the rain tracing lazy veins down the window pane beside me. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the radiator and the occasional passing car below. A half-empty mug of coffee had gone cold in my hand, forgotten, just like I was. I stared at my phone as it buzzed with notifications. LinkedIn messages popped up. Generic, professional well wishes from people I'd barely remembered. Wishing you continued success this year. DMs from college friends followed, most of them saying something along the lines of "Happy Birthday, Queen." My roommate even sent a meme of a birthday cake on fire, captioned, "This is fine." I smiled at that one, briefly. But not a single message from my family. Not from Mom, with her daily good morning texts that somehow skipped this one day. Not from Dad, who could remember the engine specs on every car he'd ever owned, but couldn't recall the day his daughter was born. Not from Josh, my older brother, who once promised I was his little girl forever, but hadn't so much as sent a thumbs-up emoji. For the third year in a row, they had forgotten my birthday. No call, no card. No, we're just busy. Just silence. And the thing is, I hadn't expected much. I hadn't set the table, or baked myself a pity cupcake or waited by the door. I hadn't even dropped hints. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I had already braced for the disappointment. Still, the ache surprised me. It wasn't a dramatic kind of hurt. It was quieter than that. A slow, sour settling in my chest, the kind of feeling you get when you realize someone didn't even try. Not because they were too busy or going through something, but because you weren't important enough to remember. I wasn't angry. Not at first. More hollow, like I'd slipped through the cracks of my own family and landed somewhere no one could see. I clicked open a new browser tab, ready to distract myself with work. But my eyes caught my own reflection in the black screen. Hair a little frizzy, circles under my eyes from another late night. No birthday glow. No sparkle. Just a tired woman alone in a quiet apartment, turning 27 with no fanfare. And then it hit me. I had spent the last year building myself from the ground up, hustling through corporate deadlines, mentoring junior analysts, swallowing stress with a tight-lipped smile. I had sacrificed weekends, relationships, even sleep to prove myself. And I had succeeded. My bonus had just cleared. $58,000. A reward not just for the numbers I hit, but for the weight I carried without letting anyone see me sweat. I had earned every cent. I had done it without help, without praise, without acknowledgement, without them. So why was I waiting around for the people who had consistently failed to show up? That question hit me harder than any forgotten birthday ever had. I closed the laptop. My heart beat a little faster as I reached for my phone again, not to check for missed calls, but to open the calculator app. My fingers moved quickly, running the numbers. Bonus, savings, expenses, investments. There it was. More than enough. And that's when something in me whispered, you don't need their celebration. Give it to yourself. It wasn't loud. It wasn't bitter. It was calm, confident, steady. That whisper became a decision. No more holding my breath for their recognition. No more hoping next year would be different. I wasn't a child waiting to be seen. I was a woman who had carried herself through life, scraped knees and all, and still kept moving. They hadn't remembered me, but I would never forget what I had become. Strong, independent, and finally ready to give myself the kind of love I had waited years to receive. I stood up, left my cold coffee on the desk, and grabbed my coat. As I locked the apartment door behind me, a small smile tugged at my lips. I wasn't going shopping for cake or balloons. I was going shopping for something with horsepower. And this time, the only name on the gift tag would be mine. 2 days after the silence of my birthday, I walked into the Audi dealership in downtown Boston, heels clicking confidently across the showroom floor like punctuation marks to a sentence I was finally ready to finish. The space smelled like new leather and glass cleaner, every surface gleaming like it knew it was meant to be admired. I didn't look around with wide eyes or act like I didn't belong. I had done that in life far too often. This time, I walked like I owned the place. Because in a way, I did. I had already researched every inch of the car I came for. I didn't want options or comparisons. I wanted her. The 2025 Audi S5 Sportback in glacier white. Red leather interior, sport package, Bang & Olufsen sound system, black optic accents, sleek, fierce, refined, like me, when I stopped shrinking. She sat on the floor like a piece of kinetic sculpture. The hood sloped low, the body elegant and aggressive at once. Her front grille dared you to underestimate her. I imagined pulling up to my old high school reunion in it, not to show off, but just to be seen. The salesman, Mark, probably in his 40s, with the kind of practiced smile you get from selling fantasies for a living, approached. He launched into the usual pitch, his voice dipped in a rehearsed charm. I cut him off gently. "I'm ready to buy today," I said, locking eyes with him. "Cash." He blinked. The charm stuttered. "That's great. Have you owned an Audi before?" "No," I replied, letting a smile tug at my lips. "But I've owned every reason not to." 3 hours later, I slid into the driver's seat, key fob in hand, the paperwork signed and sealed. The engine turned over with a satisfying growl, like it had been holding its breath waiting for someone like me to release it. My playlist came to life. Adele, a little Billie Eilish, and I rolled down the windows, letting the autumn air fill the cabin. I took the long way home, through the waterfront, past the shops near Beacon Hill, letting people look. Not because I needed their attention, because I finally had mine. The red leather hugged me like approval I'd stopped chasing. Every corner I turned, every light I beat, felt like a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a life I was reclaiming one curve at a time. It wasn't about revenge or pettiness. It was about joy. Undiluted, unapologetic joy. And freedom. And control. When I parked outside my apartment building, I just sat there for a while. No calls, no texts, just me and the soft tick of the cooling engine. I took a photo. Not a selfie, not some over-edited glamour shot. Just my hand on the wheel. Nails freshly painted crimson to match the seats. The sunlight hit the hood just right, making the glacier white paint shimmer like pride. Then I posted it to Instagram. Caption: birthday gift. To myself. No emojis. No hashtags. No tags. Just a statement. A boundary drawn in digital ink. Within minutes, the likes started stacking. My cousin Haley was first. Of course she was. She was always the first to notice the subtle things. "OMG. This is sick," she wrote. Then came a comment from Jenna, a coworker in accounting. "OKAYYY, Ms. Audi. Love this for you." I smiled, but I wasn't watching for the attention. I was watching for them. It didn't take long. My phone buzzed once, then again, and again. 3 missed calls from Mom. Then a family group text thread, silent since Christmas, came alive like a thunderclap. Mom, Jessica, we need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow night at 7. Zoom. Dad? Yeah. We need to discuss this purchase of yours. Josh. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't I tell them? Because they didn't ask. Because they hadn't remembered the most basic thing about me. That I existed. That I mattered. That I had grown, changed, become someone worth checking in on. But now, suddenly the Audi was a crisis. Now they cared. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering above the keyboard, before locking the phone and setting it aside. I didn't need to respond. Not yet. Let them wait. Let them stew in the silence for once. The irony wasn't lost on me. How quickly people remember you when you're hard to ignore. When you're loud in ways they can't control. When your success doesn't require their permission. They hadn't remembered my birthday. But the engine in my garage, the leather in my driveway, the fire in my chest. That was unforgettable. Sunday night arrived with a kind of stillness that always precedes a storm. I sat at my desk, laptop open, waiting for the Zoom call to start. I had lit a candle next to me, not for calm, but for ambience. If I was going to be dragged into the center of a manufactured crisis, I might as well do it on my own stage. My makeup was flawless, foundation smooth, eyes sharp. I had pulled my hair into a soft wave that framed my face just enough to look effortless. And the crimson blouse I wore, silk, structured at the shoulders, matched the Audi's interior precisely, a subtle middle finger in fabric form. The screen flickered as they joined, one by one. Mom, appearing in her usual spot at the kitchen counter, wine glass half full. Dad, seated in the living room, glasses perched on his nose, eyebrows already furrowed. Josh joined last from his apartment, hoodie pulled over his head, posture slouched like a teenager called into the principal's office. I didn't speak first. I waited. Jessica, Mom began, her tone pinched. Why would you spend that kind of money without consulting us? I didn't sigh. I didn't roll my eyes. I blinked once, slow and deliberate, because it's my money. Dad leaned forward, mouth tightening. It's impulsive, irresponsible. You don't just buy a $55,000 car. I didn't just buy a car, I said, voice calm. I bought myself a reward for years of sacrifice, for work you've never asked about, for birthdays you don't even remember. You know we love you, Mom said quickly, as if saying it out loud covered all debts. Do I? I tilted my head. You forgot my birthday. Again. Mom's expression cracked for a moment. This isn't about your birthday, Jessica. But it is, I said. You didn't forget to breathe this week. You didn't forget to eat. You chose not to remember me. That's a choice you've made 3 years in a row. Dad cut in. We're your parents, Jess. You don't make decisions like this without talking to family. I'm 27. I don't need permission to spend money I earned. And where was this concern last month when I was drowning in deadlines? When I landed 2 new clients and didn't get a single congrats? The only time I hear from you is when you're confused or upset about what I'm doing, not when I need support. Josh opened his mouth like he might speak, then stopped. He looked uncomfortable, tugging at his hoodie string. I watched him closely. He had always stayed out of it. Always been the one to say, "Don't take it personally, Jess. That's just how Mom is." But silence is an endorsement, and I was done giving it the benefit of the doubt. I didn't tell you it was my birthday, I continued. because I already knew you'd forget. I didn't tell you about the car because I knew the conversation would look exactly like this, me defending something I shouldn't have to justify. You're acting like we don't care, Mom said, hurt blooming on her face. That's not fair. No, I said steady. What's not fair is me being expected to keep giving pieces of myself to people who only notice I'm alive when I buy something expensive. Another pause. It hung in the air like fog, thick, pressing, unmoving. I'm not angry, I added after a beat. I'm just done waiting. Waiting to be seen. Waiting to matter enough. I've spent most of my 20s hoping for a kind of love from this family that's always come with conditions. Jessica, Dad said, softer now. You've always been strong, independent. We didn't think you needed us, Toe. I didn't need your help. I needed your presence. Mom looked away then, swiping at the edge of her eye. Josh's screen froze for a moment, the flicker of poor Wi-Fi conveniently masking his discomfort. I leaned back in my chair, finally feeling the tension leave my shoulders. I had said what needed to be said. No shouting. No begging. Just truth, clean and exact. You didn't celebrate me, I said quietly. So I celebrated myself. I clicked the red Leave Meeting button without another word. And for the first time in years, I felt no guilt for choosing myself. The moment I ended the Zoom call, the silence in my apartment pressed in on me like a weighted blanket, heavy, but not suffocating. More like the aftershock of a storm I had weathered on my own terms. I sat still for a while, staring at the laptop screen even after it had gone black, feeling the adrenaline slowly drain from my system. My heart wasn't racing. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't unraveling like I had in the past. Instead, there was a surprising stillness inside me, like the ground had finally stopped shifting beneath my feet. But I knew better than to expect silence from them. The first text came from Mom, predictably wrapped in passive guilt. We've just been so busy, you know how life gets. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just an excuse disguised as empathy, as if forgetting your child's birthday 3 years in a row could be brushed away by the chaos of life. The irony was sharp. How she suddenly had time now that I'd done something they couldn't ignore. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, Dad followed suit, this time with the bite I had come to expect. You think this makes you better than us? I read it twice, then locked my phone. I didn't need translation. That text wasn't about me buying a car. It was about control. About a version of me that no longer needed to be managed or measured by their standards. And that scared him. Because if I didn't seek their approval anymore, they'd lost their currency. Josh? Nothing. Not a word. Not a text. Just digital dust. His silence felt louder than anything. He had always straddled the fence between observer and enabler, too afraid to challenge our parents, too passive to support me. And yet, part of me still hoped he'd reach out, say something, but he didn't. I was prepared for the backlash. What I wasn't prepared for was the echo that followed, and how different it sounded. Later that night, I noticed a new message request on Instagram. Aunt Melissa, Mom's younger sister, the one who always seemed a little out of place at family dinners, the one who never quite fit the mold. I saw your car. I'm proud of you, Jess. I know they don't say it enough. 12 simple words, but they landed with the weight of everything I had wanted to hear and never had. I stared at that message longer than I expected, reading and rereading it, because it felt like someone had finally acknowledged the years I'd spent building myself from scratch. Quietly, unnoticed. I replied with a simple, "Thank you. That means more than you know." And it did. Then came the unexpected comments. Coworkers, old college acquaintances, even a former intern from 2 jobs ago. One that stood out. "You've always had quiet strength." This post inspired me to finally invest in myself. I didn't even remember her name at first, but I remembered her face, shy, eager, always checking twice before speaking in meetings. The idea that my single act of self-recognition had sparked something in her felt surreal, like I had reached beyond my own story and tapped someone else's longing for permission. And that's when I realized the Audi wasn't just a car. It was never just a car. It was a turning point, a declaration, a reminder that I no longer needed to dim myself to make others comfortable. It wasn't about rebellion. It wasn't even about anger. It was about reclaiming the narrative of who I was and what I deserved. For years, I had trained myself to seek love through compliance, through staying quiet, through managing expectations, so I wouldn't be labeled difficult. But in doing so, I had erased myself one concession at a time. This car, my car, was the line I had drawn. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. It was luxury, yes, but more than that, it was proof that I could work hard, bet on myself, and win. Every mile I drove from that point forward wasn't about the road. It was about the distance I was putting between who I had been and who I was becoming. That night, I stepped out onto the balcony, wine glass in hand, city lights blinking below me. I looked at the glowing street where my Audi was parked, engine off, but still radiating presence. I felt the wind pick up, cool against my skin, and I let myself smile. Not for the likes, not for the attention, but for the quiet pride curling beneath my ribs. I had been forgotten. Then I was doubted. Now, I was undeniable. It's been 3 months since the Zoom call. 3 months since I stopped asking for a seat at a table where I was never offered a chair. The quiet has settled around me in a way that doesn't sting anymore. It rests gently now, like a soft truth I've grown to hold with open hands. Mom hasn't apologized, not with words, but on the 15th of every month, like clockwork, she sends the same message. Hope you're well. 4 words, no emojis, no punctuation beyond the period. I used to dissect those messages, looking for subtext, for remorse, for anything resembling emotional depth. I'd hover over my screen, wondering if I should reply. Now, I just let them arrive, like junk mail I don't have the energy to delete. I don't resent her. I've just stopped expecting anything more. Josh invited me to Thanksgiving in a group text he sent out 2 weeks before the holiday. Hey all, Jess, hope you can make it. Would be nice to see you. Short, unassuming, safe. I could hear him trying not to stir the pot. I could feel the weight of his guilt in the spacing between words. I responded with something equally safe. Thanks for the invite. I'll be staying local this year. It wasn't a dig. It wasn't passive-aggressive. It was just the truth. I had made other plans. Plans that included a close friend, a home-cooked meal, and not having to brace for emotional whiplash with every bite of mashed potatoes. Peace is the table I set now. Dad, for his part, has gone silent. No more lectures. No more guilt-tripping texts about values or family decisions. I think he finally realized something he had never considered before. The grip they once had on me, built from obligation, tradition, and invisible strings, was gone. Snapped. Irreparable. Not out of spite, but from something stronger. Clarity. Freedom doesn't come from yelling. It comes from walking away quietly, without turning around. And as for me, I still drive that Audi every morning with the sunroof open, even when it's cold. I like the way the air wakes me up, crisp against my skin. The city's still half asleep as I coast down Storrow Drive. My playlist varies. Some days it's Beyoncé. Other days it's Hosier or something cinematic with strings. But the feeling is always the same. I'm not just driving a car. I'm steering my own life. Every red light, every lane change, every curve in the road feels like punctuation in a sentence I wrote myself. There's no one in the passenger seat giving directions. No voice telling me I'm lost. I know exactly where I'm going, even if I'm not sure what's at the end of the route. Some mornings, I catch a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror, hair tousled by the wind, lips curved in a smile that doesn't feel forced. And I realize how far I've come. Not in miles, in meaning. I no longer measure love by who shows up on my birthday. I no longer reduce my worth to someone else's reaction. I stopped waiting for my name to be remembered so I could start remembering it myself. The car was the catalyst, not the destination. It forced them to look at me, but more importantly, it made me look at myself. I see a woman who paid off her student loans, who negotiated raises no one thought she'd ask for, who built a career in an industry where she was always told she needed to soften her edges. I didn't soften. I sharpened my sense of self instead. I stopped playing the supporting role in my own life. I started being the main character. And no, I don't post about the car anymore. I don't need to. That single Instagram caption, birthday gift, to myself, wasn't about showing off. It was a statement. A closing line to a chapter where I kept hoping my family would change. They didn't. I did. And honestly, that's the most powerful kind of love there is. The kind you give yourself when no one else does. The kind that doesn't need permission or applause or validation. It just needs truth and the courage to live by it. So I keep driving, with the sunroof open and the music loud and the past growing smaller in the rearview mirror. Every morning is a reminder. You earned this. You are not forgotten. You are finally, completely, fully remembered by the one person who matters most.